This week at IT SPARC Cast, OpenAI is a snitch. LayerX wants to automate your back office. And shadow AI is a thing. What you gonna do?
What you want, what
Yo.
you want, what you gonna do?
Greetings and welcome to IT SPARC Cast. I'm your host, John Barker.
And I'm your host, Lou Schmidt. Let's go see what's going on out there.
It's Monday, September 8th. IT SPARC Cast News Bytes is a digest of the IT news over the last week with insights, opinions, and a little sarcasm from two experts, each with over 20 years experience working in IT or for IT vendors. And now, the News Bytes.
Oh my, we got a bunch of stuff going on in AI today. There's something interesting going on right now. So let's take this from a couple of angles. First of all, OpenAI is reporting ChatGPT conversations to law enforcement, to which the entire internet is going, Mundu! Okay, so let me go over the facts and then let's have a little chat about it. So this came to us via Slashdot and Futurism, but it's all over the place, right? OpenAI quietly added a clause to its blog noting that if human reviewers based on ChatGPT usage determine a user poses an imminent threat of serious physical harm, case may be referred to law enforcement. This news triggered a whole bunch of people going, oh my God, I mean, can't you go on outrage, insert your clause here, quietly on an AI without it? There's a lot of backlash, and there's a serious tension with the privacy promises. It appears to contradict what Sam Altman's earlier remarks were that should expect privacy akin to a lawyer or a therapist. Many see this as a slippery slope. So, there's some key issues, right? Could this be misused by bad actors, like a swatting scenario? Can I deduce your location based on this? OpenAI pinpoint where you are to alert authorities. Look, John and I, we've been on this internet security thing for a while. If you assume that you cannot be found, got some desert land to sell you. Okay. Yeah. And precedent for escalating surveillance, historic parallels. So I'm just going to lay out my view on this one. John, you can step in. Search engines have been doing this for a while, right? This is a legitimate concern. I too, what I'm concerned about is that will they leak stuff that is not directly related, like your company secrets. This policy, and I'll read off the policy. I asked ChatGPT to give me that, which is always fun to ask ChatGPT to summarize OpenAI. So the summary table for this is threat to others, serious or imminent, may escalate to law enforcement. So there's a human in there trying to decide. Self-harm or suicidal content, no law enforcement involvement, therapeutic response implied. So they're going to try to not escalate to law enforcement. Legal requests, subpoena, warrant, comply with valid legal requests. Nothing new about that. All right. Nobody should be shocked about that. Emergency risk, death or serious injury may disclose without fully legal process. That says if something's going on and we don't think we have time to wait, we're going to act. And user notification is typically given except in prohibited circumstances. So the law this primarily falls under is U.S. law, which contains a great deal of protections via the subpoenas or warrants. And interestingly enough, in the EU, it falls under Irish law, which appears to be, well, I don't know.
That's probably where their data center is.
Exactly.
The data center. Yeah.
John, what do you think
That's actually
about
not unusual. I've had multiple companies I've worked with where they put their first European data center in Ireland.
So, I mean, can law enforcement take the place of a missing mental health safety net? Is there a way that OpenAI could maybe boost an AI subfunction that tries to tuck you out of it while it's dialing for healthcare? I mean, what does this mean?
Well, so here's my take on this: is that one thing that companies need to do is to learn about self-governance before a government entity comes in and forces them to, because then it's never going to go the way they want.
Well, there's
right?
that. Yeah.
So and we've seen this, with, going back to the the movie rating systems and the video game rating systems. And when some scrutiny started to come in place, they put in their own rating systems. This is something I feel is similar. Is we saw what happened last week, where somebody hurt themselves, and they were working with ChatGPT, and ChatGPT actually helped them with writing a note and all these other things. And so, because I don't want to get demonetized or get slapped by YouTube on certain words I'm avoiding here, but you understand what we're talking about, what had happened. And so I think it's good to start thinking along those lines. Now, Lou and I are both significant privacy advocates and free speech advocates. So, in our mind, that's kind of paramount. You got to be able to have free speech, and you got to be able to have your privacy. That being said, there are rules that do infringe appropriately on free speech in the US. For example, you cannot yell fire in a theater. That's a classic example everybody always uses, because that can cause harm by causing a stampede of people to run out of the building, and somebody could get hurt in that process. So in the case where somebody is talking about getting hurt or hurting somebody else or hurting themselves, then it seems appropriate. Now, it also mentions specifically that humans will be reviewing that. So if you're in a situation where you're using an LLM to write a piece of fiction, and those keywords and key terms come up in that fiction, then I'm going to guess that the human reviewer will take a look at it and say, well, this really is the creation of a piece of fiction, so then this probably doesn't need to get escalated. That being said,
we don't know yet.
And humans can make mistakes, machines can make mistakes, and humans can have agendas. So if the human doesn't like what they're seeing, they could potentially escalate it. So there's always that risk of abuse and mistake. So we'll have to keep an eye on it. But again, especially what's going on in the US right now, where the US government has decided to back off on regulating AI in a lot of different ways, having the company step forward and say, we're going to self-regulate in this way, seems to be a reasonable approach to me.
Yeah, I've got to say, on the whole, as long as they're transparent about it, which they appear to be, there's no harm, no foul. Right.
And at the end of the day, if the question is what's going to happen with the incident that happened last week, is OpenAI going to be found liable in some way on that? Then that they've got to be thinking about protecting themselves to some degree. So I think that's important. But speaking of protecting yourselves, so I came across an interesting article on Hacker News, and it was about protecting your company, your company's secrets. And it's a term, I'm going to use the term shadow AI. If you think about shadow IT, and anybody that's in IT should know about shadow IT. Shadow IT popped up the day after IT did. And the reality is that there's always going to be somebody out there that's going to try to circumvent the rules and restrictions that IT puts in place, whether it's because they feel too encumbered, or because they have malicious intent, or just some other, because they want to, in some cases. With shadow, go ahead.
But I do have a point, sir.
Yes.
Claude really turbocharged this.
100%.
100%. And that's essentially what we're looking at as an extension here.
Correct. And I've been guilty of shadow IT multiple times in my career. I have bypassed certain rules. I've used certain hardware, or not used the hardware that was given to me, or whatever it might be, in order to feel like I was being more productive. And that's a big reason for shadow IT. And shadow AI fits into the same area, where maybe there's a restrictive rule. You're not allowed to use AI at all, or you can only use, I've got friends at a company where they're only allowed to use Copilot, and specifically Copilot inside of a Microsoft Edge browser. And that's the only way they're allowed to use Copilot. And that just seems pretty restrictive.
It really is.
And Copilot's not necessarily the best tool in all cases. And I personally use multiple tools to get my work done. And I use ChatGPT probably more than anything else. I know Copilot and ChatGPT are pretty tightly wound together, but there are differences. I use Grok for some things. I use Claude for other things. It's just
So
whatever.
how do we deal with this?
Yeah. So what the problem is that if you're on not on an enterprise plan, as you're using it, your data in most cases is also used as part of the training data. Now, the enterprise plans protect against that. So if you are a Copilot house and you're have people using ChatGPT or Claude or Grok or whatever it is, then if they're uploading sensitive documents or entering sensitive data, maybe sales data or future product data, that is going into the learning set for that tool, or usually is. And even Claude, who was the privacy focused AI, has just recently made that the case for especially the free and user accounts, not the enterprise accounts. So this is the potential danger, is that information could effectively be retrieved through the right kind of prompting by somebody else, and that's where it comes in. So
So what's out
the
there that'll help?
what you need to do is be monitoring your network. And so first thing to do is use URL based indicators and alerts. So use your firewalls, use, if you have switches that can be monitoring traffic, take a look. Are you seeing OpenAI's URLs inside your traffic? Are you seeing large uploads of data to those URLs? And most policy systems today can be seeing that. So maybe somebody's uploading large documents, maybe they're doing a lot of back and forth, and then just like ask what's going on. My take on this for the remediation side is ask why they're using the shadow AI, why they're using a different AI tool. Be curious about it as opposed to punitive on it, at least on the first or second case. And the reason for that is maybe you're not providing the value you think you are, and maybe you need to look at it. So it goes back to example. I was at a shop where we were using Cisco WebEx, and nobody liked it. It's actually a horrible tool. Plus, we were a competitor to Cisco on the networking side, so it was a really bad look when we would go on a customer call and we were using a Cisco tool. So we pushed for Zoom, and some of us started using Zoom before it became the tool that was allowed. So that's almost a legitimate reason, I would say, for shadow IT. And IT said, like, why are you doing this? And we explained why, and then the company moved to Zoom. So maybe there are legitimate reasons why people are using these tools. So there's other ways you can do this. You can do metadata monitoring. You can look for those file uploads on your network, and why are these big files being uploaded and where are they being uploaded. And most policy tools and monitoring tools for networks today can give you all of that. And you can set flags, and you can say that if I see X amount of data going to specific URLs or specific areas, or outside the country, maybe they're using a hosted AI in a different country, and that's again another thing that you want to look at. Those are the types of things that you want to be looking for.
So, one of the takeaways I take from this is a lot of folks, when you say URL filtering and URL control, they immediately go to illicit adult content.
Right.
And they start to think. And that is a viewpoint you have to get out of, or you have to expand.
Right.
Right now, the frontier for your data leakage has a URL attached to it.
Yep.
And you absolutely need to take and gather intelligence in this. And John, like you said, the idea that you have a user doing this isn't really a good idea to go in and rebuke them. It's a good idea to go in and educate them and learn from them.
Right.
And find out maybe there's a better way to do things, because we in IT have a lot of things pulling us in different directions. Folks that are going to these alternate tools, they're using them because they're getting their job done. So what do you need to do?
So sometimes that's true. Sometimes they're doing it to get their job done. Sometimes they're doing it because there is a nefarious reason for it. And if you think about the cases of your cloud storage, your cloud drive situations, I've been at companies where OneDrive was the option, and OneDrive's not necessarily the best cloud storage, but I knew whole departments that were focusing on using Box. But the question is, who actually owns that? Because the company wasn't paying for it anymore. And if those people leave, do they still have access to the box? Is there some sort of control on that? With the AI, again, if they're using that AI, maybe they're trying to bypass the monitoring tools that you might have on Copilot to see what they're doing. And maybe they're trying to do something that's not legitimate. So that's part of the investigation. If that's what you find, then you need to take your potential punitive situation, or at least a warning, and don't do it again, get the managers involved and so forth. But in most cases, I think you're going to find, like Lou said, that they're just trying to get their job done and they feel this is a better way to do it. And so that's why you don't want to drop the hammer on account one. You just want to go ask what's going on.
Yeah. And this stuff is starting to mature pretty quickly. And that is interesting because we're starting to see intense activity in this AI space in places where we haven't seen as much before.
Right. Right.
And let's talk to that. So there's a company called LayerX in Japan that is, and this comes to us via TechCrunch, that is working on automating the back office. And this is a really big deal because folks who have worked with Japanese companies, we have, my wife worked for one, know that they tend to be a bit more conservative in how they move to new tools, right? They want to make sure that the stuff works first. So it's really interesting to see this, that LayerX, a Japanese AI software as a service startup, just closed a $100 million funding round. So this was led by a US firm, Technology Crossover Ventures. So that they did the first investment in the startup, and this brings their total funding to 192 million. That's a really big bet. And what they're trying to do is they're offering an all-in-one AI platform tailored to automate enterprise back office tasks, covering expense management, invoice processing, corporate card operations, through its flagship platform, which is Bakaraku. I just ripped that one to shreds, didn't I? Bakaraku, thank you. And it's already serving over 15,000 companies. So it was founded in 2018 by Yoshinori Fukushima, who is also the creator of Ganassi. And it hit over 10,000 clients in February 2024. So, and they're really going to grow. So what we're starting to see, my takeaway on this is that when the Japanese business markets start to dive in, something's really happening.
Absolutely.
And
these are the kind of tools that you expect to see AI start getting involved in. They were talking about expense management, invoice processing, corporate credit card operations, things like that. And those are lots of pieces of data, really mundane tasks, very boring, and humans get bored, miss things, or mistype things, or so forth. So this is the kind of area that we've been continuing to say is where you should expect to see AI come in and help. And it's those things that it's not going to get bored. It's not going to, just, start paying attention to something else and mistype or something. This is what it's really designed for. Now, you still want humans to review it because AI is not perfect. It will make some mistakes, but you're going to cut a lot of the drudgery out of your efforts in those back office tools by having something like this.
And this is a really great example of AI in the trenches. So this is something to watch for, because one of the, like, if you're in IT, you're doing these kind of applications, you're seeing SAP, you're seeing Oracle and all those folks who are doing this stuff, but they've also got to protect the legacy base, which means they can't wander too far away from the way their processes are done now. That's just the nature of being an incumbent. It's not any problem with these companies. It's just how things are. Customers who are buying your stuff now are going to want a continuity between where you are and where you're going. When a new company comes in, they can come in with a completely different way of doing things. And sometimes that way is much better.
Yeah. Now, when that happens, as the head of IT or the IT director or the IT administrator, whichever role you fill, it is your job to make sure that you understand the full scope, that just because it has pretty bells and whistles and they say AI, that you don't just jump on it. And that's one of the bigger mistakes that happens out there, is understand how the process works. What happens when the AI gets it wrong? How do we deal with that? All of those questions are things you need to ask.
Yeah, what does remediation look like in the event of a failure? And let's face it, we live in a world where there is a metric for acceptable failure,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of people do not, and I know this from dealing with backside of financial companies, right? There is a cost to making everything perfect. There is a cost to everything not being perfect. If the cost of not being perfect is lower than the cost of being perfect, you know how it's going to go, right? They're going to let
Yeah.
that money go instead of trying to fix it because it's cheaper to let the money go.
Yeah. Don't
So,
let perfect get in the way of good enough.
right. And,
Yeah.
but the problem is that many companies do not have this discussion. What does good enough look like? And you need to think about that.
Yeah.
What does it look like?
Now, before we wrap up, I do want to mention that we got an interesting comment from BJ on our YouTube channel for the last week's video, where we were talking about the FTC jumping in to protect U.S. companies from foreign mandates on cloud encryption and backdoors. Now, his comment was much more political than technical, so I'm not going to read it here. However, he did have a point, and I'm just going to leave it at that. And you can feel free
You
to
can
go
go
read
look
that.
at the comment if you
Go,
want.
go do that on your own. But that is going to cover this episode. And we couldn't do this podcast without listeners like you. And we would love to hear what you think. Make some comments on the use of AI. Should we be tracking AI? Are you concerned about the privacy aspects of OpenAI's new policies and so forth? Send an email to feedback@itsparkcast.com or hit us up on X at IT SPARCcast. And as BJ did, you could, if you're watching on YouTube, you can leave a comment down below. And if it's particularly insightful and not too political, we'll go ahead and read it out on the appropriate next broadcast. And hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. That way you never miss an episode. And with that, from the world of enterprise IT, take care.
Thanks for taking some time with us. We'll see you next week.